Here at Delray Beach, we're sitting in Dad's apartment overlooking the beach in February 2019. Came over to talk with Dad about some of his earlier stories. Dad, your father had come back from an emigration to Argentina and was raising the family in Italy. What were your earliest memories?
My earliest memories were in Italy. I was born in a little typical town on the top of a hill called Torre Picili. It's between Rome and Naples. A nice little town. Everybody knew everybody else. And the first, I don't remember this, but my father told me that the night I was born, at home, of course, with a midwife, in the valley below the town, he set up fireworks. And the whole area was lit up with all these fireworks, and people would ask, what happened? What's this about? And they'd go, oh, Don Mario was born today. So that's is my first memory as told to me. I don't remember. My first memory actually is in another town called Isernia, a town built by the Romans. So it goes that far back. And it has a high school. And the reason we moved to Isernia was my brother had to go to high school. And there was no high school in Torre. Isernia was really a small city, and it's on the side of a mountain, like 9 out of 10 Italian towns, with the piazza in the middle and a road running up and down the hill, so you can get to it. But I thought it was a very beautiful town, although I was just a kid. I was about 6 years old. And
now, I visited this town with you, and when we went past the church, I looked down at the steps, and the steps were broken on the corner of the church. What was that?
That's my signature left behind. When I was 5 or 6, my brother took me on his wagon to go up to the railroad station, which was at the top of the town. And we were going to pick up tires for bicycles because he worked in a bicycle shop on the main piazza. And the shop assembled the Torino bicycles. So this particular day he went up to, with his long triangular wagon, went up to the station, pick up these tires, but they were almost as long, in a bundle, almost as long as the wagon. So he told me to get inside the tires, crawl in. I was small enough to do that. And we'd go down back to town, which was all downhill, all cobblestones. And when we started down the hill, he thought he could stop it just with his heels. It was a very low wagon. But we had too much weight. We went roaring all down the town until we got to the piazza. Then he tried to make a left turn into the piazza, but we slid sideways and we crashed into the steps of the cathedral, and the whole piece broke off.
These are granite steps. That was quite a straight.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad they never fixed it, because it brings back immediate memories when I see that broken step.
Now, your brother and his friends would often get you involved in their ideas or gimmicks. There was a story told of an afternoon when the farmers had their wares on the square that they were selling.
Yeah.
And there was this apparently delicious pile of watermelons that was put right over the grate, the storm grate.
That was the watermelon snatch. I was only 6 years old. My brother was 8 years older, so he was a teenager. And he worked in this bicycle shop and a couple of other teenagers. And they always used to use me like the test dog to go out and try this or try that. And the theory that I was so young that the villagers wouldn't get so mad at me. So this particular time, the watermelon man had come into town for Saturday night market on the piazza, the big square. And he had set up this pyramid of watermelons. It was watermelon time. And my brother, his name was Francesco, but I couldn't say Francesco when I was very young. So it came out Keiko, and the rest of the life he was stuck with that nickname of Keiko. So I was with him and his friends in the bicycle shop. This pyramid of watermelons was just across the piazza. When the boys figured out that under the shop, the bicycle shop, there was a sewer which ran across the piazza to the other side. They had never been in it, but they knew it wasn't sanitation sewer, it was just rainwater. And there was only a couple of inches of rainwater. So the boys said, Mario, see the watermelons? Go through this tunnel and see if you can pull one down, because the watermelons were right over the rain drain in the piazza. So I got in there, I had blonde, curly hair with everybody knew that hair. And I'm crawling through this tube or whatever you want to call it, squeezing through until the kids were looking from the other end with flashlights from where the bicycle shop was. And finally, my brother shouted, "That's it, Mario, that's it, stop, right there." And then he said, "Push that cover that's above your head." So I did. I'm surprised I was able to do it. And then he says, push it over, push it over. So this grating I slowly pushed over, and then instead of one watermelon, a whole cascade of watermelons came into this, the thing, the sewer we were in, the pipe. And out on the piazza up above, we could hear screams and running of feet in all directions. And the whole pile of watermelons in this that the farmer had set up collapsed and went flying all over the square, knocking women over and people on bicycles, they were down. I didn't know what was happening. All I heard was all this roar. And of course, my brother and his two teenage friends, when they saw what was happening, they took off. The next thing I remember was somebody grabbing my hair and pulling it up through the sewer. And it was a policeman. One policeman said to the other, "Who is that?" Because I was covered with mud. And one policeman says to the other, "Who else is Mario?" Which was at the end of a lot of stories. And he said, yeah, that little town where I was growing up, I was notorious, always getting into one kind of trouble or another.
Dad, one of the other stories I recall is you had a knack as a toddler for recalling dirty jokes overheard by the old men in the town square. And they would put you up on a chair when you would walk by and say, "Mario, tell a joke." And some of these jokes were edgy.
Yeah, they were dirty jokes, but not that bad. What happened was that the Army had a headquarters just down the street from where we lived. And I used to go down because the soldiers liked to play with me, and I became like their mascot. And I would hear all these stories that they would tell. As I said, they were a little bit sexy, but they weren't really dirty stories. But coming from the mouth of a 5-year-old, that's a different thing, you know. You'd expect it from a full-grown soldier, but from a 5-year-old, it would surprise people. So that's why they would stand me up on top of a table outside the bar, 3 or 4 men, and they would say, "Mario, tell us stories." In fact, I used to go home and tell stories I learned from these soldiers. I'd go home and tell my mother. She would laugh at what I was, I don't know, it was privileged or not, but like other families, the fathers usually went to America ahead of time to earn enough money to be able to send for their families. That was typical. And my father, the same thing. He came over first. In fact, he came over the year I was born, 1923, which is the same year my famous grandfather died. And anyway, so my mother was left with me and 2 other kids. The other 2 were normal. I was a little hard to handle, especially for a lady.
I think precocious and incorrigible were words that I'd heard in the description of those years. So your father was 5 years in the United States earning money as a writer, and you came in through Ellis Island, right?
No, I was a citizen of the United States while I was still in Italy, because I was under 6. My father became a citizen in the States, and when he became a citizen, at the law at that time said any children under 6 automatically become citizens. My brother and sister were not citizens, but as I recall, we didn't go there. We went to Grand Central Station directly from where the boat landed on the west side, around 42nd Street. The boat was called the Roma, which at the time was one of the 3 big ships crossing the ocean. And an uncle of mine, who lived in Providence, where we were going to live, because my father's sister lived in Providence, and he had gone up there to join her, because I never saw my father until I was 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, when we arrived. And I remember being on the ship at the railing, looking down at the people on the dock, greeting the ship, marva people. And my mother said to me, "Mario, look at that red head. You see that red head?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's your father." And that was The first look I saw of my father, my grandfather had died, as I said, when I was born. And I didn't see my father for 5 or 6 years. And we were kind of to get adapted to each other. He used to take me for walks. I always remember because I was walking in a strange place at this time, this place in America called Providence, Rhode Island. And he would walk ahead of me, and suddenly I look up, and suddenly he's gone. And he'd be hiding behind a door. For him, it was a game. For me, I was scared at first. But after a while, I realized that he was hiding somewhere. But I was as a child, I grew up without a father because I didn't see him until we arrived in New York by ship, 1930. I was born 23, so I was 6 to 7 years old.
So you show up in Providence, Rhode Island. You learn English as an early schoolboy.
Yeah, I had a brother and a sister, all arrived to be registered in an American school. And of course, none of us spoke English. But my brother and my sister, who were older teenagers, they were put in a special class, which included the teaching of English. In my case, nobody ever taught me English. The teacher were right. They said, you just absorb it. And I did. And I became, I must say, the American school system, I owe a lot to it because every age I went through, every stage I went through, there was some teacher who sort of adopted me.
Dad, the school years you went through were during the Depression, and Providence was struggling like everyone else. There was a very large Italian community. You'd lived in different Victorian homes during your time, and the family, everyone had to go out and work, even as school children. You had stories of different jobs, working with a grocery, working with a bakery, working with later driving a delivery truck. You used to tell the story of the family on Fridays. All the kids would sit at the kitchen table and push their pay towards your mother and father.
Well, the pays came in a little brown envelope, which we were not allowed to open. And when we went home on a Friday night, my brother, my sister, and myself would put these 3 brown envelopes on the table, and either my mother or my father would open them up, unglue them. Out would come the dollar bills and the pennies. You weren't making a lot of money those days, but it was all we had. And when the money came out of the envelope, either my mother or my father would take a few coins and push them aside. That was our share. The rest went towards taking care of the family. So there I was, 8 or 9 years old, and I was already working to support the family. But I wasn't alone because in Providence, where we moved to from Italy, Providence had 150,000 Italians, immigrants who all spoke only Italian. Even the police and the firemen had to speak Italian because these people didn't understand English at all. But it was just like living in Italy. We all spoke Italian to each other. As I said, even the police and the firemen spoke Italian. But I was lucky because I had a teacher in high school who adopted me as others did afterwards too. She adopted me as sort of her son. It was very, very kind to me. Her name was Helen McCarthy. She taught journalism, and journalism was what I was interested in. So I was in her class. But when it came time to go to college, and I was fortunate, I could know that I was going to college because nobody could afford college. I think there were only 2 or 3 or 4 kids on the hill who could pay enough to go to college. But in my case, Brown University, an Ivy League school in Providence, was the first one to offer me a scholarship, 100% scholarship, while I was still a senior in high school. I hadn't graduated yet.
But you graduated as a valedictorian of your class and attracted that offer from Brown.
But yes, well, I was sort of notorious in Providence. In the Federal Hill is what the Italian section was called. Providence is built on 7 hills, just like Rome. And the Italians lived on one hill, Federal Hill, and the rich Americans lived on the east side, where Brown University was. So anyway, when it came time to go to school, Brown offered me a scholarship because I had won so many prizes in Providence, including, there was one they hired the Metropolitan Theater, which is the largest theater in Providence, and to bestow something called the Campbell Trophy to me, which I was allowed to hold and to look at, but then they put my name on it because they kept it then. And so I was pretty well known. Also, my father was editor of the Italian-American newspaper called the Italian Echo. Even in South America, he was a newspaper man. In Italy, he wrote for the Mattino in Naples, which is the largest paper in Naples. So when he came to the States, he didn't speak English. And he found it very difficult to speak English. And I don't know why. My mother, myself, and the kids, we all picked it up pretty easily. And he spoke fluent Italian, Spanish, and French. But when he tried to learn English, it was like hitting a brick wall. Anyway, he had the editor of the paper, the Italian paper that he founded. And he became pretty popular. On Saturday night, on Friday nights, the paper would come out. It's a small paper, like the Daily News, small in size. It didn't have as many pages at first. But another kid and I would go up to the print shop where they printed the newspaper, and we would fold. I don't know, when there were 6,000, 7,000 newspapers. With our fingers, we'd fold over the paper, then we'd run our fingers to make the seam. By the time we were home, both of us had bloody small fingers that had pushed out so many newspapers.
Now, by being editor of the paper, your father's influence on the vote and politics was significant, as I recall your stories. And senators, judges, congressmen They were even would come by your house and look for his favor for the pen. You even had Hollywood notaries come to your house. As I recall, Jimmy Durante had visited.
Yeah, but he was very popular because the population in Providence, especially Federal Hill, was 100% immigrants who had a tough time learning English. So this Italian newspaper called the
Echo.
The Echo of Rhode Island, L'Echo del Rhode Island, became very popular among the Italian community. And they even had a one page which was English for the teenagers to read it. But the 8 or 10 other pages were Italian.
Now, your interview for Columbia came as a rather hidden and kind of
well, that was
surprise.
I would say. Brown offered me a scholarship. Everybody celebrated. I don't think anybody ever won a scholarship from Federal Hill, where I lived, the Italian kiddo, I would call it.
So I understand your principal called you up one day to give you the keys of the car to drive a couple around town preparing an interview for the kid at Classical.
Yeah, my teacher, who was Miss McCarthy, who has kind of adopted me as a second mother, was my journalism teacher. One day she said there was a man coming from Columbia University who needed to visit the swanky schools up on the east side. And she said, why don't you guide him around, because he doesn't know Providence. And so this guy came down and drove a big, long limousine. But he was very, very nice. Very not loud like the Italians, some of the Italians were. His voice was absolutely modulated. He had blue eyes. His name was Joseph M. Murphy. And when I had to go to Columbia, this guy that I drove around to show different schools created a scholarship at Columbia. He was the head of the
School of German.
He was the head of an association called the Columbia Scholastic Press Association, which would test newspapers from high schools and junior high schools and colleges from all over the country, put them in their categories, first grade, second grade.
So your interview actually took place as a surprise. It wasn't an open interview. You were to drive this person around.
Yeah,
So
I didn't know why. My teacher, Miss McCarthy, arranged for me to do that. I thought he was just a guy, some guy.
this was actually your interview.
Actually, he had come down just to interview me because I couldn't afford to go to Columbia to be interviewed. And so this was all set up. And he approved me. And I got the scholarship, which I think is maybe still up there. It's a scholarship that it covered not only all the school fees, but also enough. I also gave me a job in journalism, which gave me enough to pay my rent on the room, to pay my food and everything else. And it's all done by these two people. Miss McCarthy, my high school teacher, who referred me to Mr. Murphy in New York, who became my employer because he hired me for the Scholastic Press to be his assistant.
Okay, we'll do a segment here leading into Dad's getting into the war effort. Dad had come down to Columbia. That was 1941,
Yeah,
and in his sophomore year, the war was now out, and everybody was joining for the effort. You actually applied for the Air Force Ground School, figuring that might be one of the safest to be in, and found yourself headed for tank destroyers in Fort Hood, Texas.
yeah. They also thought at Columbia that my schoolmates thought I was crazy, that I was volunteering when they were taking every step they could to come up with excuses for not being called. But I just did feel like reading every day about all these kids on the front lines in Europe and Japan, and here I am sitting in a luxury at Columbia. So when the war broke out, I was at Columbia, sophomore, and they were not taking soldiers from the students at colleges. And after a while they did, but at the beginning they did not. And a guy came on campus, was a recruiter for all the branches of the services, and he gave us a rundown of each one. And then he said that if we volunteered, because college people were not being taken, if we volunteered, we could choose any of these branches that he had described in the Army, the Navy, the Air Corps, and the Coast Guard. So I decided to volunteer. I figured sooner or later, when I graduated, they were going to catch me anyway. And also, I felt uneasy, uncomfortable walking around when a lot of my friends were now in the service. And I kept thinking that people were saying in their mind as they passed me, "Hey, what about you? What are you doing here?" Anyway, I volunteered for the Air Corps Ground School. So I get the telegram from the president to go to such and such a camp in Massachusetts to report at a certain time, certain date, which I did. And I get there, and they sent me, they said, "You're going to Waco, Texas." I says, "What's Waco, Texas?" He says, "That's the tank destroyers." First time I had even heard the word tank destroyers. But what the tank destroyers were, something, it's like looks like an army tank, but it has front wheels, and that makes it go very fast. But it was also very light. So 50 caliber machine gun to shoot right through the tank. And so I was sent to Texas, at this Camp Hood, Texas. I was in my first year. I had to do 90 days for basic training. I think I was in the first 30 days when there was an order from headquarters at Camp Hood saying to report to headquarters. And everybody says, "Oh, yeah, you did it." So I walked up to headquarters fearing what could happen. Instead, there was a lieutenant there who was not from Camp Hood, he was from Washington. He had come down to interview me because I spoke and read Italian, and I could, since my mother was Neapolitan, I could also speak the Neapolitan dialect. So he said, they have these cards we used to fill out with every bit of information about you. That's how they found out that I not only spoke Italian, but also the Neapolitan. So they sent this guy to interview me, and he said to me, do you know Naples? I said, oh yeah, my mother was born in Naples. By this time we were down in Lazio. We hadn't got Naples yet in the war. And he said, well, we need somebody to jump over Naples and join the Italian underground and act as a liaison with the U.S. Army. I knew the war was going to soon be in Naples, and I said to him, is this a volunteer job? He said, of course. He says, very dangerous. Volunteer job. I said, well, I don't volunteer, thank you very much. And he wasn't upset at all, but he was turned down by a lot of guys. So the lieutenant said goodbye in a very nice way. And he goes back to Washington, and I go back to my duties at Camp Hood, waiting to finish basic training, when within a couple of days, there's an order from Washington saying DeOrchis is to report to Washington. Didn't say why, but they gave me my gun, and they gave me some heavy-duty army clothes, and off I went to Washington to report to a place called Anacostia Park. So when I got to Washington, there were different trucks waiting there, and one of them said Anacostia Park. I took that, I went there. It was in a park, but they had put up all these tents. And there was a lot of confused guys there. A lot of them knew what the hell they were doing there. They hadn't been told why. And then I noticed another thing. A lot of the guys speaking there spoke Italian or had Italian names. And in fact, 2 or 3 of my best friends in Providence showed up there. But one was in the infantry, and one was in the Air Corps. I forget what the third one was from, the artillery. So we had been very close friends. And they were all asking, what are we doing here? We're supposed to, nothing. Then, after 2 or 3 days, they shipped us down to,
Was it Norfolk, Virginia, or where'd you go out of?
it was down in Norfolk, Virginia, where we went on this ship for troops. As I went up the ladder, I noticed on the side of the ship was printed, built in Providence, Rhode Island. That made me feel very good.
So it sounded like the government was gathering people to prepare for the Italian campaign, and you were being sent across, but
I didn't know why.
I didn't know why. So you're in the convoy, and apparently your your engine failed on your convoy.
Yeah.
Off goes the convoy, and there are German U-boats around.
We were about 50, 60 ships in the convoy, all victories and that type of ships, troop ships. And we were all headed south like a big blanket on the sea. Airplanes flying overhead for protection. And we headed south, and there was debates, are we going through the Panama Canal to the Pacific, or are we going to turn around and go to Africa? But the idea of turning around seemed silly. Why could we go all the way down to the coast of South America if we were going to go to Europe or to Africa? Well, it turned out they had figured out that a lot of submarines, German submarines in the middle of the Atlantic, could reach our shipping if it was going out of New York or Baltimore, Philadelphia. But if you went straight south, they wouldn't try to go after you. They were assigned to shoot down only ships going across the ocean.
I think they had a range issue themselves.
Yeah, well, they couldn't get back if they came that far.
So your ship now the convoy is turning towards Africa, as it turns out. Your ship fails and it's left alone floating in the sea.
Yeah, if a ship broke down, well, that was really kind of a little bit frightening. You're in a stark dark, no lights, because the electricity went out on the ship. We knew there were German submarines out there. But after, I think it was 2 days or 3 days, we were bobbling around all by ourselves off the coast of Africa. When they announced that the crew itself had repaired the boat, something down in the engine room, and we heard the engines going round and round. Everybody cheered. The next thing we knew, we landed at Casablanca, which had already been taken. There were so many sunken ships in the harbor that we had to zigzag. Our ship had to zigzag to be able to get to the place where it was going to tie up. So we landed ashore and were sent to this, I can't remember the name of the park now. But the same thing, we get there, nobody knows who we are, where we're going. We're about 40, 50 by that time, all with in the same group, 149 it was called. And none of us, but the one thing we did notice was that almost everybody in this group either spoke Italian or a dialect, had an Italian name. So we knew this had something to do with Italy, but we didn't know what. And when we landed at Algiers, which was, once in a while it would be Bob, but it wasn't as bad as if you were in Italy. And then in Algiers, to my surprise, instead of being put in a group going to Italy in a convoy, I was told no, I was to stay behind, go up to the hills. There was a small college at a town called Tiziou, Tiziou. And we went up in a jeep. Pretty soon there was no signs of the military, and we turned into this little college, which the only people around were officers, and most of them were generals. I didn't know what the heck was going on. Then when I landed, I was advised that I was going to teach Italian to some American officers and British and French officers who needed to know some Italian because they were going to be involved in the landings in Italy. And sure enough, there I was, a corporal, and I'm teaching a class of about 30 soldiers, which was okay, except that they were all generals, every one of them. They were English, they were American, and they were French.
Now, when was it afterwards you were pulled to military government? As you went through this education period, then you moved on to be with the forces or the government as it was moving towards
Yeah.
the continent.
Well, that when I was shipped to Casablanca, it was called, couldn't be called military government because Casablanca was in the French Empire. They were not enemies.
So the college was a part of the government, the military.
Well, the college was run by military government. The building was an old building that belonged to the French, and the system of teaching was part of the war effort, war preparation for Italy, because of many of the officers, including English, French, and Americans, didn't speak any Italian. Some of them spoke dialect, and a few spoke real Italian. The trouble was that under the Italian culture and system, an officer has to be able to speak either pure English, which many of them did not understand. It's not like today. In those days, very few understood it. And or you spoke to them in Italian, but if you're an officer, to demand the respect you're supposed to be getting, you have to speak correct Italian, otherwise they laugh at you when you speak a dialect. So our job was to get these French American and English officers who were going to go to these Italy and train them in North Africa, because the system was that in North Africa and Algiers, we would form teams. These teams of officers were trained to occupy a particular town. So when the military government team came in behind the fighting forces and took over the control of the town or city, they would know everything about that town or everything about that city. There might be just two guys. There's a book, a Belfordano, which is about two guys, Americans, who take over this Italian small village. Naples, as I remember, had like 600 officers just occupying Naples. But all of them had been first trained in North Africa. And that was a big advantage and a big to-do, which unfortunately we're not following today.
So you moved, now you joined the campaign for Sicily.
This thing going on in Africa, that school, the school was part of what they call Chapt. And Chapt was supreme headquarters of the Allied forces, not just American, French, Canadian, and so on. Supreme headquarters of Allied Control Commission. And it was called Allied Control Commission because at that point you couldn't call it military government. Later on we changed it. So in North Africa we were Allied Control Commission, but we did the same thing. We occupied towns, and so that they had some supplies. They didn't start to have violence and whatnot. So with every town we dropped off a team of soldiers who had been pre-schooled about that particular town. That's how it
And
worked.
this happened across the Sicilian campaign, and then as you went on to the Italian mainland.
And it's for Sicily, the biggest team was Palermo. forget how many they were. And then in Italy, and I was a little surprised when I was in Italy, operating in Italy.
Where did you land in Italy?
We landed in south of Naples. I can't remember the name now. Then we went immediately to Naples, and I was sent up to teach. And that's when I found out that the headquarters I was in, the Supreme Court headquarters, Allied Control Commission, that the commander was this guy named Eisenhower. That's the first time I heard the name. That later on, I got to meet him. And the Italian we were teaching to these officers was not the complete Italian language, beginning with the alphabet and all that. We're just teaching phrases that they expected they might need to use, like where is the city of so-and-so, how many soldiers you have, phrases like that. But they couldn't be in dialect, they had to be in Italian. I remember the soldier, an American officer, complaining to me in Africa where I was teaching the Italian to these three countries, French, English, and American. This American officer says, I'm wasting my time here. I speak Italian. I said, well, I didn't know that. He says, tell me something in Italian. He said, what do you want me to tell you? Tell me that girl is pretty. And he says something. I said, no, you don't speak Italian. You're speaking Sicilian dialect. It's completely different. For example, the girl, word for girl is vagliola. Nella is another word for girl. But in Italian, it's ragazza. Ragazza, it's an entirely different word. So he tried to argue with me, but I said, if you talk your dialect to these people, I'm sure they're not going to have respect for you. Because they only know Italian.
Was the teaching was just in Africa, though. When you joined and the army was moving, and you're in part of the military government with Eisenhower through Sicily and Naples, were you now involved in other responsibilities? You were still teaching?
No, when I went ashore, I was responsible. I was with military government, who was assigned these teams of soldiers and officers.
Taking over the different towns.
So, like in Italy, I was in a town called Taranto. And these teams, except for Florence, Milan, Genoa, and Naples, and Rome, the rest of the teams were 5 people, 6 people. And Eisenhower was the overall commander, but headquarters is made up of several sections. Like G1 is the command, G2 is intelligence, G3 is operation, G4 is transportation, G5 is military government. Every headquarters has G1, G2, G3, so on. I was in G5 of Eisenhower's headquarters. When we moved to Italy, and when we moved through France, and then I think when I arrived in Munich, I was assigned permanently to the team. Up to then, I had been part of the headquarters.
Do you recall when you first met or came across Patton?
Yeah, Patton was in I think it was in France, when we were in a town No, it wasn't France, it was in North Africa. We were in a town that was in the agricultural part of North Africa, in Algiers. And they raised cows. These cows were trained in the morning to leave the houses in town, go up the road, climb up into the Alps, and they'd be going all day, all by themselves. And it began to get dark.
Just for the record, Dad, I think you moved the picture up to Garmisch, where the cows used to come down from the hills at night. In the morning, they'd go up to the hills. That was in Garmisch in the Alps.
Yeah,
You were just in North Africa, saying you might have first encountered Patton in North Africa, where his campaign went after Rommel.
Patton.
But where did you first meet him?
I met him in, I think it was in.
You could say North Africa.
Either North Africa, it was the first time I met him. Then in France, I met him again. The incident about the cows was in Africa, when the road that runs from Algiers, and you can go down to Italy through the pass. There was a lot of traffic on the road, but these cows had been trained from when they were born to go up to the mountains and come home at night without anybody attending them. And it was a great advantage not to have to set people like most places. So Patton objected to all these cows who were blocking his car. He says, "Get those damn cows off the street." I said, "General, I'll try, but it's difficult." So he goes away, and I talked to the mayor. He says, "No, they were trained from childbirth to do what they do every day without having to have a lot of manpower taking care of them." Fortunately, Patton never came back on that subject.
Where did you first meet Eisenhower?
Eisenhower was when I joined G5 in France. I think it was Lyon, France, and he was going up through the bottom of France to then join with the guys who he may have been up at the north. When I met him, he was in the south. Very quiet guy.
And when you were in, was it Marseille, when you landed, one of your responsibilities was to guard a cash shipment to support the landing.
Oh, that was in the landing in southern France. We had to, I was part of the military government. We were going to need a lot of money to get things moving. So we had cases full of money. It had it was a US dollar, but it had a yellow stamp. And they said, "This, when you go back to the States, you can throw this away." In fact, it didn't work that way. They wanted the soldiers not to, keep this money, which we were getting for nothing.
So you were stuck with the landing having been just ahead of you. You come ashore with the money. And now
yes,
there's
about on the beach.
Right, on the beach.
My job was
to protect the money.
to protect all the cases, but I knew which one had the money in it. It was bigger than that desk. We landed on the beach, and this case was thrown down on the beach along with all the other hundreds of cases. But if anybody broke into this particular box, it's millions of dollars in there. So I was worried. The colonel says, keep an eye on that box. So, well, I can't stay up all night keeping an eye on that box. And the soldiers are maneuvering all over the place. The nurses had been landed. I noticed someone putting the nurses by themselves. They asked me, where can we put these nurses and surround them so the soldiers won't fool around with them all night? So I just put them on that box over there, and I'll give you an all night, somebody to put a wire around the thing.
Because I remember from an earlier description of this, you had some tent canvas, you had these boxes, you got the boxes lined up like a platform over the sand to keep them dry.
Yeah.
Put down the tent canvas, and they were able to now lie up on these. But in fact, they were lying on the money, on the cases with money. And you found some MPs around. You said to the MPs, guard the nurses. But in fact, the nurses were laying on the money, and you didn't want anybody to know what that was about.
But when they heard they were going to defend the nurses, they got all kinds of volunteers. The nurses slept on top of the boxes instead of on the wet sand. Sand was all wet because the landings had just taken place.
Now, one of these landings, you had been asked by the general to go up the main boulevard to a church, and what was behind the church?
Oh, that was in Marseille.
Yeah.
When we landed in Marseille, there's a boulevard, can't remember the name now, big at least six,
Lanes.
what do you call them?
Lanes.
6 lanes, runs right up from the water, and runs right up the middle of Marseille to this beautiful cathedral at the end of the street. It's one of the famous things about Marseille. So I was told, not just me, but a group of us were told to go ashore first. There didn't seem to be anybody ashore, and to see where was the German army, because we knew they were there. And so we went ashore. We asked, where'd the Germans go? Where'd the Germans go? And they said, we don't know. They went up the highway. Behind the cathedral was the beginning of the highway. And when I looked around the cathedral, I hadn't seen a single soldier. Suddenly, I'm looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of soldiers moving around, getting ready to go up this highway.
So in bringing his Jeep around the cathedral, the German army was behind it, and Dad once described pulling the Jeep up, stopping with the Jeep running, facing soldiers who had their heads down with their guns collected in these, piles together, and not one looked up. And you said you slowly put the Jeep into reverse,
Yeah.
and you slowly backed around the cathedral, and not one German looked up.
No, they all they wanted to do was get the hell out of there. So they didn't want to get into a fight anyway. But there was a discussion in the headquarters, Eisenhower's. They're happening here. They were discussing, should we bomb? There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of German soldiers. And right behind the cathedral, and somebody wanted to start dropping bombs right away. And the officer says, no, we might damage the cathedral. Let's let these Germans get ready to go up the highway without interfering with them. Let them take all their time, get ready. And then they go up the sideway. They're going to go several hundred miles going back to Germany. And what they did, it was terrible. When the Germans had a convoy going for hundreds of miles from Marseille, they were going up to, I forget, the first time in Germany. And they took them 2-3 days. They let them
Get into a narrow part of the highway,
into
pass.
this narrow path that they were all on, all happy to be going home. And then the American bombers came, and it was absolutely nothing you want to see. There were bodies all over the place. And machine guns, and they dropped bombs on there. There's no way they could get off the road. An occasional side road. But these bombers came by in 2 or 3 seconds. Terrible. Well, it was good for the war, but it was terrible. I thought it was terrible what we did. So,
Now, you were also telling me one time about the generals were having a secret meeting, and you were around as in support, and you were asked to find some ladies for the officers for this particular meeting one time, and you had to go round up some ladies, and you talked about how you had found some French dresses, and I remember you first telling me this story. I said, Dad, you're like running the party here. You're getting all the things the generals want together.
it wasn't a party. They were having a business meeting, so-called business meeting. But from the business meeting, these guys said, bring in some French girls. And things like that went on all the time.
That was orders. So, Dad, you managed to support the government as it was going forward, taking towns. Your responsibility was seeing to stabilizing, getting food lines, electricity, water, reestablish war crimes, and going after art thefts. Eventually, towards the end of the war, turns out you find yourself remaining to help with the final war effort, and you were recommended to go up to Garmisch by the
Well,
colonel.
I tell you, how that happened. The war was over. And they announced on a certain day, everybody's dancing and jumping up and down and celebrating all over the place. And they were making lists, because the guys couldn't wait they were making lists to pile into all kinds of trucks and take them to Paris and other places where they could get on trains or on ships. And the officer who was making these lists, I went in to talk to him, not about going home. I knew the guy very well. I said, I see a lot of guys really happy out there. He said, yeah. I says, but you shouldn't be. I said, why? He says, 2 guys from the U.S. Army can't go home. You and Lacoste. Lacoste was a friend of mine from Chicago. I said, why can't we go home? He says, apparently you learned the military government rules. So I said the books were that thick. So well that they can't afford to send you home, because now we're going to get all kinds of officers coming over who just want to be able to say they were in the war. They're not really trained at all. It's politics, you know. And they said, we've got to have somebody here who knows these rules and regulations, or it would be chaos. So I begged and I prayed. I couldn't go. And then he said, but you can go anywhere in the theater in Europe, and that'll be okay as long as we know where you are, so we can ask you questions about these regulations. So right away I said, I'm going to go to Italy. He said, no. He said, Italy's all blown up, and you ought to go some other place. I said, well, what other place hasn't been blown up? He says, well, there's this beautiful town of Garmisch-Partenkirchen in southern Germany, where the Olympics were held. Estonia Hayes won the Olympics. He said, there's not a shot been fired for miles and miles around the Garmisch. And it's a town, a city of hotels. So he says, you can't beat this. So I went down, and sure enough, they put us up in a very luxurious hotel. We were just, I think, 8 officers. And then we had 30 or 40 men to run this area of Garmisch. But around it were like 20 other little towns. One of them was the town where they hold the Passion Play every year. It's very famous, out in the open. In fact, Eisenhower ordered us to arrange for the soldiers to see it before they went home. But the village that makes up the cast, they're not professionals. They're all, Jesus was Alfred Land. His father was Jesus, his father was Jesus. That kind of thing. The whole town takes part. I had to find Jesus because nobody knew where the hell he went. I finally found him. He was in jail for operating in the supermarket, in the black market. So then I had to look for the Virgin Mary. And we looked, and after about a week, we found her with a colonel, an American colonel, as his companion. So I called headquarters. I said, it's a hell of a thing. I found Jesus Christ is in jail, and the Virgin Mary is shacking up
with the colonel. Now, you had told us one time a story about going down to the prison camp and catching a train.
Oh, that was when we first got down to Garmisch. First or second day, out at the train yard, Garmisch is a pretty famous place, a good sized train yard. Saw all these trains, but one of the trains was drawing a lot of attention from the MPs, the American military police. A lot of excitement. We were called over. There were 3 or 4 of us from military government. And this railroad car, which was ordinary cars, not passenger cars, had bodies right up to the ceiling, stacked like wood. And on one side you saw all the heads. Right around the car you saw all the bare feet. Most of the guys didn't even have clothes on. They all had been gassed. There must have been 800 or so. And someone called Eisenhower, who was up in Munich about an hour or 2 away. And he came down before we let that last train go, so he could see for himself that what the Germans were saying, that the Nazis are German, this was going on, nobody believed it. They were taking carloads of people they didn't like and would gas them and then take them and dump their bodies in a car. So that some things are not nice to see. There was a woman at the camp. The camp was Oxford. The wife of the guy that ran that camp had a hobby, and she made lampshades like that from the chests of men. If they had the good-looking tattoo, she'd have the skin cut all around, and she'd make a lamp out of it. So, all kinds of crazy people. I started getting into the newspapers.
And you had also talked about driving on the edge of town one day, and you see cables running up into the mountains from what looked like maybe a ski lift, but it was on no maps. There was no mention of this. It wasn't being used, and you and another officer decided to check it out.
Yeah, because we had maps, military maps, which were the latest, and this wire did show up the cabin at the bottom, wasn't on the map, so we said we better go up and see.
So you actually started the ski lift up yourselves.
The what?
You started the lift, the motor. There was a motor that ran the lift.
Nobody there. And we took a couple of, we only carried rifles and carbines. We took a couple of big guns, regular guns. And up we went on this cable car, nobody coming down. We kept going up, we lost it to clouds. And finally we come to a stop. And a little old lady came running after us. She didn't speak English. And I said, what is this? She said, she's walking to us. She thought the war was over. We were the Americans coming. And this was the biggest ski resort recently built, so recent that the Army, we didn't know about it. We found 6 or 8 buildings, thousands of new skis, not even taken out of their packages yet. And this lady, she was smiling all over. And her husband came in, he spoke English. He said this is supposed to be for the German officers to come and relax. So this whole thing had been built. But the German officers never got to use it. I wish I had gotten to use it. However, when we announced what we found, a hell of a lot of it, they allowed only officers went up there to enjoy themselves. So that old war was
So one day you get a knock on the door, and USO tour is on, and you found the Rockettes at your door, a group of them.
Yeah, they were making the rounds of southern Germany, and in each town they would usually stay with military government because they deal with not soldiers every day. And so they had their address, and they drove up in their jeeps, a couple of jeeps. There were about 8 Rockettes, and Gene Snyder was the director of Radio City Music Hall. The Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall And he had come with this particular group because the star, Dixie Dunbar, was his wife. So there's a director of Radio City Music Hall, and the star of the show, Dixie Dunbar. The other girls were just beautiful girls, dancers. So they were set to go to all these different stops for every army camp. After they left us, we were one of the first. And we lived in luxury because we were running a town of, I think only College was 190,000 people. And so we had the governor's or the mayor's house, gorgeous place. We had a cook that could cook anything you wanted, and he was captured French. The Germans captured this French guy who became their cook. Henri, his name was. All kinds of stories like that.
As I remember, you had a story you told some of the women who had survived from the camp came up and cleaned up and helped take care of the USO girls, the Rockettes, like Girl Fridays.
Yeah. When the Rockettes, after they left us, 2 nights later they were back. They were supposed to keep going around. And they said, this is, we're in dirty tents with no floors, just dirt on the ground. So they said, can we stay here and go by jeep? And we thought about 1/50th of a second. Oh yes, I think we can stay here. I almost married one of them.
So there was Dixie Dunbar, and I remember the name of another one was Nobby Keys.
Nobby Keys.
That was
Nobby Keys was like that.
And that became the Colonel's.
The Colonel took her over. We went down to Venice, which is not far from Garbage, 4 or 6 hours, something like that, through the Brenner Pass. We took the 2 girls, Colonel with Nobby Keys, and I was with Dixie Dunbar. We went down to, the idea was, I had said how beautiful Venice was. The girls said, oh, we wish we could see it. I said to the Colonel, why don't we take him down for a night or 2 show in Venice? He said, fine, sounds like a great idea. So off we went. When we got to Venice, it was nighttime. There was a bars across the road. English soldiers, no Americans anywhere. And of course he said, oh no, you can't stay here. That this is only for troops, no girls, no couples. So they turned us away, probably because we were Americans.
So Dad, you were heading towards Venice. The Rockettes had come through. Were using your station as a kind of a home base. You had this description of Venice. The girls were interested in joining you and the Colonel, and you headed down towards Venice and found it occupied by the English.
Yeah, and they told us Venice was off limits. Nobody's. They meant Americans, no Americans, because there were lights all around them. That made there in Venice. So we went down the road, all the buildings are dark, and at the end of where they parked their boats in Venice, there was a big 8-story building, about 8 stories, brick building, all dark. There was no soldiers around. So we went in with the Jeep. I knocked on the door. Little old lady opened the door and spoke in Italian and says, sir, we're closed. I spoke to her and I said, no, it's all right. This is the commander of the British Army.
The British or the American Army? This is the
No,
command.
I said British
Oh,
Army.
the British Army.
Because the British were there. And I said, he needs a nice place to stay for the night, which she understood. So when she hears he's the commander, boom, all the doors opened up. Her husband came out and helped. And they wouldn't give us 2 rooms, but now I had like 40 rooms.
Oh, really?
That's also part of the war.
Vacation in Venice, not bad. All right.
I remember when I first got to Casablanca, this is on the same subject. I could get up we knew that when soldiers are recruited for the war, the army, for some reason their sex drive goes up. They all think they're going to be killed, and before they're killed, they want to make sure. That's so hard. So to give you an example, in Casablanca, the first day we were there was a mob of soldiers in this camp, and we had a tent. At night, I was surprised that usually when there's an army camp, around the edges there'll be the girls soliciting. And here there weren't any. So I asked somebody, I said, where is the girls around? He says, oh, just follow those guys to the cemetery. I said, the cemetery? Yeah, right. So 3 or 4 of us were following these 3 or 4 who were ahead of us. And sure enough, they turned into a cemetery. The signs, French, said, it's a cemetery. And we got inside and what the arrangement was, they would rent you a tombstone with the girl. A particular tombstone, it was all yours. But the girl's mother is there. So when I look around at every tombstone, there was a girl with a soldier, and there's a woman sitting there who's the mother of the girl, make sure she doesn't get hurt. There's all kinds of things. There was a bar. This had actually been a farmhouse, but they turned it into a bar. And over the bar was the usual sign of all the drinks you could order. But this bar wasn't drinks you could order. It was a sexual activity you could order. So you sat on number 3 or on number 4. And then you paid and you went inside they show you a booth where the girl would be that performed that particular.
Different thing.
That war is hell.